really good about the defense. And going back to the Lamar Jackson situation, there has been very good communication so far. There is not concern in that capacity, despite his absence today. But in general, I will say there are some pretty good vibes in Baltimore right now.
Yeah, it does feel like, though, talking about Lamar's absence is something that Baltimore head coaches have to do on the regular. Meanwhile, we have some breaking news. Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice was incarcerated after testing positive for marijuana in violation of the terms of his probation. Rice is now going to miss OTAs and mandatory minicamp. Instead, he's going to be spending the next 30 days in jail. He was booked into custody in Dallas on Tuesday. He is scheduled to be released on June 16th. Now, back in July of 2025, he was ordered to serve jail time for his role in a multi-car crash in Dallas in March of 2024. The NFL suspended Rice 6 games last season for violating the personal conduct policy. So, Jeff, I mean, what more can you tell us about this situation, this latest chapter for Rashee Rice?
Well, first of all, in the very immediate forefront is the fact that Rashee Rice will not be able to participate in OTAs or the mandatory minicamp, of course. That's something that relates to the football field. The question then becomes whether the NFL will also provide discipline based on the fact that he did fail this marijuana test through his probation. That's not through the NFL, though. I did reach out to the league, and their simple comment at this point is we are aware of the report and will decline further comment at this time. So we will wait to see whether Rice will face further discipline from the NFL here. Certainly, though, his own problems to deal with in the immediacy here with 30 days in jail.
And in terms of the team, Rice is supposed to be a key piece for Chiefs receiving core that has certainly had to rely a lot on Travis Kelce, who's obviously coming back this season. He's been the team's leading receiver for 4 straight years. Of their top 3 wideouts, Rice played 6 fewer games than Xavier Worthy and Tyquan Thornton did last year. So, Peter, here we are. What's your take on this situation?
Totality of it all is just disappointing. This is a situation where the young man gets stung here for this thing, so he's got to serve 30 days in jail. He was going to have to spend those 30 days over the next 5 years at some point, but now it's expedited. But, just speaking with people around the league and with sources in Kansas City leading up to the draft and even up till today, this thought that they're going to go get Deebo Samuel or go and make a play for Brandon Ayuk, like, they don't have money. They're tapped out. They don't have the flexibility to go out there and now suddenly entertain calls and start hosting free agent visits. It's almost like this is what we've got. The draft has already passed us by, and we're showing names like Cyrus Allen. Like, you're going to have to really rely on those young players to make plays. But disappointing, and I don't even know what they expected from Rashee Rice this year based on his availability, whatever else. But this certainly sets them back. And to Jeff's point, there might be some real league disciplinary action again. So at this point, you say it's a slap on the wrist, but it actually could be more than that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, uncertainty around receiver like this would be bad for any team, but I think Peter highlighted exactly why it's especially bad for the Kansas City Chiefs, because they don't just hope Rashee Rice returns to form. They need him to return to form, I believe, for this receiver group to be competitive or good enough, frankly, in 2026, especially if they can't add to it for financial reasons. Rice has had, such an up and down career as a rookie. You guys remember he was like a sensation in this offense. He was a yards after the catch machine. He was so good against zone coverage and so paired so well with Kelce and then Worthy. And then I had a missing year because of the injury. And then last season, it kind of felt like he just never quite returned to form. He really struggled with drops in the end of last season. Drop rate over 10%. That's something that needs to improve. And when you take a step back and look at the group as a whole, they brought back Tyquan Thornton. He can be a deep threat. Xavier Worthy can work deep and maybe some underneath and get some manufactured touches. But Rice really is the only receiver you feel good about as a short intermediate receiving option who you can rely on in this offense. And if he's not either available or not 100%, then I start to really get concerned about the group as a whole.
Yeah, and to that point, as he's in the final year now of his 4-year rookie deal, he has missed 22 of 34 games in the last 2 seasons. All right, coming up on NFL Live, Cincinnati made some big moves on the QB situation as Deshaun Watson is back and taking QB1 reps. He has not taken an in-game snap in nearly 600 days. Obviously in the mix to start here. Cleveland 3 different starting QBs last season. Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel, a combined 4 and 9 as rookies. Talon Green, he was a 6th round pick this year, because why not have 4 in the room? Jeff, what are you hearing about how they're going to handle this QB room in Cleveland?
Well, first, you have to start with the fact that Todd Monken is a new head coach there, essentially giving the closest thing to a clean slate to Deshaun Watson. So he does at times feel like he is going to be in pole position to be that day one starter. But we still can also look back to OTAs last month, and he was splitting first team reps with Shedeur Sanders. Very curious to see how that plays out in the coming days. But again, I think going into training camp, the biggest thing we can say is that Watson is healthy after not playing since October 2024. And he also comes in with a new head coach who has been very vocal about the fact he's not going to evaluate the tape that he's seen with the Browns in recent years, but rather he's going to consider this a blank slate and give Deshaun Watson the chance to start.
So crazy to think, too, that Watson is extension eligible after this season. I mean, what if he comes in and has a great season? But Mina, listen, whoever is at quarterback, what are your expectations for this offense that was the least efficient in the NFL last year?
Well, I think that the Browns did a lot of things to improve the situation that any of these quarterbacks walk into. I think this could be one of the most improved offensive lines in football this season, which wouldn't be hard given all of the injuries and inconsistency they had last season. But I think they added quite a few versatile pieces, players who can play multiple positions, both in free agency and the draft. And then this receiver group as well should be dramatically improved. As you guys know, I love Casey Concepcion, who they drafted. Denzel Boston out of Washington fits so well with them. And then suddenly there's less pressure on Jerry Jeudy. Harold Fant Jr., the tight end they drafted last year, already looks like a star. But, for the quarterback, if it is Shedeur Sanders, who for my money is probably still the leader in the clubhouse, we'll see. None of that will matter if he can't play faster. Last season, when he threw the ball in rhythm, he actually wasn't that bad. In fact, you see here, 2.5 seconds to 3, that's in rhythm. He had a QBR of 64, which is below average, but it's definitely sufficient. And then when he held onto the football and it was over 3 seconds, QBR of 4, which is unsurprisingly near the bottom of the NFL. And the problem is he had the longest time to throw of any quarterback in football last season. So he has to play faster for this to work. But I do think if he is the starter, will be in a significantly better situation than last season.
Okay, that's good. Let's look on the other side of the ball. And Peter, apparently you win the big prize today. You get to talk about everybody who's not there. Myles Garrett isn't there. Defensive Player of the Year, got a new contract last season. Your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. So the Cavs play the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals, Game 1. I'm scrolling Twitter. I see 92.3 The Fan. I see my guys Nick Wilson and Jonathan Peterlin. And what are they talking about? They're talking about Myles Garrett and the fact that he's not there. And their point was, this is not a story. Let's not make a story out of this. This is what he did last year until June 9th when it's mandatory. Why are we even talking about this? I think it could be a story. New head coach, new defensive coordinator, new fresh blood. Maybe it's Deshaun Watson playing at quarterback for the first time in 4 years. Why isn't it a story that their star player and the best player for the franchise in the last nearly 2 decades, maybe since Joe Thomas, wasn't there at OTAs? Could he have shown up? Look, I know it's going to be nearly impossible to get us riled up and ready to go about doing Myles Garrett trade talk in May after we went through all of free agency and all of the draft. But it all goes away if Myles Garrett shows up with a happy face.
Yeah,
and
maybe he's just not seeing it right now.
Hannah,
yeah,
until he's there, that still looms. And I think it's fair to talk about that. Hey, Myles Garrett, not at camp.
Yeah, record 23 sacks last year, 6th highest paid defensive player in the league. But who knows what he's seeing or what he's doing. There is one guy that we did see today, and it's Mina's, one of her very favorite. You mentioned him, Mina. Casey Concepcion. There he is. Showing off, right? He's got that new number 1 jersey, Mina. They gave that to him, right?
That's a good number for him. Number 1, that's going to look good streaking down the field.
There you go. Number 1 in your hearts and your minds. That first round pick.
Do you see 95?
Yeah.
I don't.
No, I don't. But number 1 is front and center. There he is. He wanted that number, so he made the switch this week, and they gave it to him. Well done. All right, he showed up. New York Giants, they also showed up today reporting for OTAs. Last night, taking the stage at the Beacon Theater in New York, which is a really cool spot for their annual town hall event. And their new head coach, John Harbaugh, got some laughs, answering a few questions about their rivals.
I could care less about what's happened last year or the year before that or 10 years before that. I don't give a crap about any of it. Not one bit. All I care about is tomorrow's practice. Because if tomorrow's practice is the way it's supposed to be, that'll be one more step in the direction of being a good enough football team to kick the Cowboys' ass.
Yeah! Pretty good on the big stage there in New York. Definitely knew how to give the people what they wanted. What do you think of the tone he's setting, Shregs?
Well, I was watching clips of this, and Art Stapleton, who's the beat reporter, was posting it throughout the night, and it felt like it was like a high school pep rally before the homecoming game, and it was perfect. It was like reason for excitement and reason for optimism, and it was cool to see Dart and Scatterboo and Thibodeau and all of these players there, in addition to Phil Simms and Carl Banks, who are NFL legends. I'll say this, the vibes are really high. And they're excited. But that Malik Neighbors news that we got last week doesn't make me do flips. The fact that this guy had to get a second surgery to kind of clean out some scar tissue is something that's worth noting. We'll see when he gets back. But everything has been perfect otherwise. Giants have hit a home run the entire offseason. But you know what? They start with Dallas at home, and then they go to LA, both in primetime games to start the season. And all these good vibes and all these happy thoughts and all the rah-rah, if they start 0-2, Giants fans are going to be pissed like they always are after a rough start.
Oh, yeah, man. New York can turn on a dime. Let's talk about Jackson Dart for a second, Mina. We've seen some quarterbacks take that dreaded sophomore slump, but he showed so much promise last season. What do you think he needs to do now to take the next step?
Well, amongst other things, he's got to take fewer hits to play the entire season. Third highest contact percentage of any quarterback in football last year. Some of that was of his own volition with scrambles. Some of it was how much they used him on designed runs, which I thought was puzzling. I mean, look at that number leading the NFL, and he didn't even play the whole season. And so in comes John Harbaugh, and here's where I find this very interesting. John comes from Baltimore, where we all know he coached a quarterback who was one of the, if not the most prolific runners in football. But Lamar Jackson is a very different runner from Jackson Dart. He is able, because of his elusiveness and his style of running, to avoid a lot of the hits we saw Dart take. So I think for Harbaugh, he has to figure out a way to rein him in, to avoid contact, to ensure that the run game isn't entirely dependent on threat of Dart keeping it, the way I thought at times it looked in New York last season, because he needs him to play an entire season, and this isn't just about winning, the first month of the year. This is about his entire career.
We've seen this debate with Josh Allen before, where it's you don't want to suck out the wild and aggressive nature that Jackson Dart has shown. And even last year, after that travesty of a Patriots game on Monday Night Football, where Troy Aikman was basically aghast at the way that he was running so recklessly, he said, well, I'm not a soccer player. And it was like this beat of the chest of I'm a tough guy. And you got to balance that, which you like in a little bit of a way for your leader to be that way, with just being smart, because if you're unavailable, you're hurting the team. So the voices that'll be in his head are obviously Harbaugh, but I find it interesting to see the communication between Matt Nagy, Greg Roman, Brian Callahan.
Yes.
Those are three coaches who have been around some NFL legendary quarterbacks, and I would hope to think that Jackson Dart will lean on their expertise and maybe take their word that sometimes going out of bounds is okay.
Hopefully that's not too many voices, though, right? That's a lot of voices in your head for anybody there. All right, coming up on... Welcome back to NFL Live. Look at Patriots owner Robert Kraft, Cowboys owner Jerry Jones was also there, arriving earlier today. NFL Spring League meeting there in Orlando. Jerry in a coat and tie there in Florida, as is our Jeremy Fowler. So we've heard some dribs and drabs of reports coming out. What's official now? Yeah. What has been decided at the league meetings, my friend?
And a fresh news out of Orlando. The league just approved the ability in 2027 and beyond to schedule up to 10 international games. So it used to be 8 league-run international games. Now it's 10. They are expanding worldwide, so expect to see more of that in 2027. The NFL is even looking at some Asia markets like Japan, which is a long distance, but that's an important market to them, so it's something to watch as well. Nashville is the Super Bowl recipient in 2030. They are hosting Super Bowl 64. Titans officials raved about the city's walkability, its music scene, its authenticity that it will bring to Super Bowl. And they hosted the 2019 draft, and it was a huge hit, hosted like 600,000 people, so they feel like they can handle it. Minnesota will now have the 2028 draft. They're psyched about that. They feel like they have the infrastructure with US Bank Stadium to be able to handle that. You see it there. Could be 100,000 people just in that facility alone. They'll also have watch parties all over town. And also, Hannah, right now, owners are discussing the Chicago Bears stadium future. Will they go to Arlington Heights, Illinois? Will they go to Hammond, Indiana? No decisions made today, but owners are being briefed, and it is top of mind.
Wow. I love Chicago. I love Minneapolis. I love Nashville, but I would definitely go to Japan for a game. That sounds unbelievable. Jeremy Fowler, thanks for that. All the latest. Yeah, if they do it, we're there, my friend. Meanwhile, let's go to Atlanta. Why not? We love Atlanta, too. The Falcons are in day 2 of OTAs with Tua Tagovailoa joining the team and Michael Penix Jr. recovering from an ACL injury. And Penix Jr. spoke earlier today.
Yeah, it's been great. I never met Tua, before now, but I actually knew his brother. I actually came out with his brother. We both trained together for our pre-draft stuff, so I had a good relationship with him. And they're kind of very similar. So it's been great. He's been awesome. We all been great, and that whole room. Not just Tua, but Trevor as well. We got Jack in there now, but everybody's been great. We all been working together and trying to help each other be better.
All right, JD, walk us through this. This is a real quarterback competition in Atlanta, right?
It is. We were just talking about the Browns situation. This one actually might be the most interesting quarterback dilemma in the NFL. Dilemma or competition. Dilemma is probably a little bit of a negative word. But Michael Penix and Tua will be splitting reps. And I think it's especially interesting given that Kevin Stefanski is coming in there with fresh eyes, like we talked about with Todd Monken. And I also think that what's going to be even more interesting is the fact that Tua is the type of practice player who will likely impress. He is accurate. He throws a great football by all accounts. I think that he's going to come in there and maybe surprise some people with his ability to really compete for this job. We should also point out, though, that Michael Penix is still dealing with his recovery. So for now, he's still he's splitting reps in individuals. He is not yet participating in team drills. I would expect by training camp for that to change.
Okay, so Mina, which quarterback in your mind has the bigger upside for the Falcons?
I think it's got to be Penix, mostly because he's played so much less and is more of an unknown. I mean, I think he started something like 12 games, certainly not an entire season, whereas Tua Tagovailoa at this point, we know who he is, we know his strengths when they're highlighted, and we're not that far removed, right, from him being very successful in Mike McDaniel's offense, but we have also seen his weaknesses as a quarterback. To go back to Penix, though, there have been moments, even whole games, where you've seen that big arm that made him so appealing to Atlanta, the ability to throw the ball downfield, outside the numbers. But I also think you have seen limitations that will be pushed on as he moves forward. Specifically, I would say, lack of throws over the middle of the field, and then the fact that he would not or did not play under center in this Falcons offense under Zach Robinson raises the question, can he do either of those things? I think he's got a lot to prove in this league. And if he can prove that he's capable of playing more under center, throwing over the middle of the field, then you start thinking about his future as a quarterback. But as of right now, Peter, it remains an open question whether or not he's capable of it.
No, and they ran that pistol offense for him last year, and it was to his detriment because now new eyes come in, whether it be Matt Ryan or Ian Cunningham or Stefanski or even Tommy Rees, and it's like, I don't have any proof of concept that you can run our offense under center, which is a major deal in the NFL. They strictly were out of shotgun, and they ran this funky, pistol stuff, and it isn't orthodox, nor is the fact that he did overcome those injuries in college, nor is the fact that he was a top 10 pick by a team that already had a quarterback they were paying all this money. Fresh eyes on this team, remember? So they bring in Tua for next to nothing. And if I look at Matt Ryan and I look at Kevin Stefanski, those are two quarterback gurus. Ryan, of course, played the game. Stefanski played it in college and has been considered one of the better quarterback coaches over the course of his 20-year NFL career. I would trust whatever they decide is the best option. And I'm thinking Penix has the bigger upside, yes, but it might be a bit of a learning curve for him where Tua, you plop him in right now. And to Jeff's point, on air and just in a practice, there might be no prettier thrown ball than Tua Tagovailoa.
This is so crazy to both of your points. Penix took over 300 snaps last season. You know how many of them came under center? One. Just
Wild.
one. That's crazy. All right, coming up, the big
Expose them though. It's getting disrespectful, guys. Defense, come on, bro. One word, man.
Okay, instead of Offensive Player of the Year, JSN getting the wrong trophy, but he says, just keep the award at this point, leave it in the history books, though. Actually, the league has apologized. They're going to send him the real deal. The funny thing is he actually had 3 tackles last year on interceptions from Sam Darnold, so he did qualify there.
Hey!
Shrakes. What do you guys think?
Look, I appreciate all of it. Myles Garrett got the Offensive Player of the Year. It's just a mix-up in the mail. That's how I look at it. I'm sure that's what happened. That's it. Yeah.
Right.
So we got us to thinking that what if this happened to someone on our panel here, our esteemed Mina Kimes, who, look at that, Mina. They totally,
Yes,
there's
exactly.
your trophy.
Oh, Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wheel of
She'd
Fortune.
still be proud.
I'll play Celebrity
Mina would
Wheel
still
of
be proud of
Fortune
that.
anytime, please.
You know what?
We'll
Hey,
take
can
that
I interject
invitation.
here? Wheel of Fortune's the minor leagues. Mina won the major leagues. Let's go. Come on. What are you
I know,
talking
she
about?
did. She did. Our Celebrity Jeopardy champ. I do want to see her, though, on Wheel of Fortune. She would dominate. There you go. All right, time for
Different game.
Yes, let's do it. Let's make it happen. Raiders offensive coordinator Andrew Ginocco spoke yesterday about his rookie quarterback, Fernando Mendoza. Here's what he had to say.
He's somebody that wants to know the whys of everything, the story behind everything, what we're calling, but why are we calling it? He's really just a sponge that wants to know everything. So it's a lot of fun working with a quarterback like that because he's coming in as a blank slate in this offense, never been in this offense before, and just asking a ton of questions. He's asking questions that you might not have thought about in a couple years.
Yeah, they're probably not used to that. That kind of tracks with what we know about Mendoza. When do you think we'll see him starting, Shrek?
Well, it's interesting because Ginocco and Kubiak had Darnold last year in Seattle, and they both come to Vegas, and they've got Cousins and Mendoza. This would be the biggest question because if you know Tom Brady, the one thing he's preached about quarterback play in this league is that we rush these guys too early, and it's for the detriment of those quarterbacks. The ones who have the most success, himself under Bledsoe or, of course, Mahomes under Alex Smith for a year, are the guys who weren't rushed. However, if Mendoza is clearly outplaying Cousins and seems to be ahead of the game, I don't know if you just keep him in the stable for that reason alone. It's going to be interesting how they play, and I would hope to think that if he is ready and he's outplaying Cousins, he'll get that opportunity.
Yeah, and the tougher part of their schedule is on the back end, by the way. All right. New Orleans quarterback Tyler Shuck had some praise for rookie wide receiver Jordan Tyson, the 8th overall pick. And here's his quote. He said, I think his body control and his separation is what stands out to me. I think he's an elite separator, and also his hands have been really exciting to see kind of close up now. He's so sure-handed. He's got this great kind of feel. He's very friendly to the quarterback, I would say, and obviously his big playability is what shows up all over tape. So we're still very early on in the process, and I think more than anything, just getting on the same page with the playbook. He's doing a really good job of that. I think he's really smart, so we're excited to keep going with him. I kind of love the idea of seeing the two of them, Mina. How do you think he's going to impact Kellen Moore's offense?
Well, that's a great scouting report from Tyler Shuck because a lot of the terms and the way he described him remind me of how a lot of us felt about him watching him ahead of the draft. The body control, the separation, the suddenness. And I like how it pairs with Chris Olave. Olave had 100 catches last year, but no other Saints receiver had more than 50. The next closest of the receivers was Rashee Rice, who, as we know, was traded. So they really needed a second wide receiver, and they get one who has the ability, I think, to be a number one. This could be a 1A, 1B situation in New Orleans, and it's not surprising that the quarterback is thrilled.
Yeah, no kidding. I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch. Meanwhile, on to Cincinnati, where quarterback Joe Burrow spoke about his team's offensive moves, and he said, and I quote, "They're going to keep getting great players to come play for the Bengals, and when they do that, then it's my job and Zach's job and the leader of this team to bring the locker room together and then go execute on the field. We have everything we need." Jeff, what does he mean by everything we need?
Well, he means defense, and quite frankly, that has obviously been the biggest question in Cincinnati when it comes to supporting Joe Burrow and keeping him from having to have a shootout every single game. 4 new defensive starters. Burrow saying that he has felt the presence of those players already. No, they're not really able to go up against each other much in practice at this point of the year, but Burrow just saying that the locker room is feeling the presence of those players already, and that is huge. I mean, Burrow's endorsement, I think, for this defense is a big deal because it has been such a deficiency for this team and quite frankly kept Burrow from being better from a season standpoint than he's been. So Big news out of Cincinnati. I think that they're on to good things.
Yeah, it feels like they wouldn't have done that big trade for Dexter Lawrence if not for maybe some implicit or direct pressure from Joe Burrow, right, to improve that defense and improve it immediately. And I think that defensive line will be improved. I do still, pardon me, have concerns about the run defense, however, especially kind of looking at the linebacker group. But that's where I think the quarterback can help, because if the Bengals offense is what we all anticipate it'll be and he's able to create leads, they might not have to stop the run as much, and that defensive line, which should be vastly improved, will have the chance to get after it because opposing offenses will have to pass to try to keep up with Cincinnati. So I do think this defense will be better. How much better is the question, but average really should be good enough if this offense is what we think it'll be.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting offseason for them, right? I mean, they spent the 4th most money in any team in the league. That's not Bengals football historically. And I spoke to Zach Taylor last week on my podcast, and he said, we return 11 starters on offense. 11. That is really rare. There's continuity with the coaching staff. And if you look at the AFC North, there is a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, and a new defensive coordinator in 3 cities. There's one team that brings everyone back, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. I know they're kind of a sexy pick right now. I saw Orlovsky gave him as like an early May Super Bowl pick out of the AFC. But there is a lot of momentum, and there's a lot of reason to like what the Cincinnati Bengals have going on right now. And they've missed the playoffs 3 years in a row, but they do feel like there's something cooking there up there in Ohio.
I mean, listen, that's an offense that's ranked in the top 10 in efficiency over the last 2 seasons, even though Burrow missed half of last season. All right, this is new on NFL Live. The Cardinals, one of the teams in action today for off-season workouts. And 3rd-round pick Carson Beck is getting an opportunity. He's getting some action because Jacoby Brissett currently is away from the team as he seeks a raise. JD, what kind of opportunity might this present for Beck?
Well, a huge one. I mean, just any opportunity at this stage is obviously big. And Carson Beck is one of those guys coming out of the draft that felt like he was not really going to see the field very much at all. And, again, back to what Peter was saying about what Tom Brady thinks about the development of quarterbacks. You don't want to rush a guy too fast, but at this juncture, at this point in the offseason, I think it's really a great advantage for Carson Beck to be on the field.
Yes.
It's interesting. Mike LaFleur was the coach of the Senior Bowl a few years back when Gardner Minshew was in it, and he said he blew him away there, and that's one of the reasons why he signed him as a free agent. I didn't expect them to think that it's going to be Minshew versus Beck, but we could get to that point. It's just a question of how long will Jacoby Brissett really do this? Who has the leverage in this? And is he bold enough to miss that much time where maybe a chance to be a week 1 starter goes out the window?
Yeah, no, we talk about the NFC West, who maybe have 3 of the best coaches in the entire NFL, 2 arguably 3 of the 5 probably best teams in the NFL. And the Cardinals are dealing with a Jacoby Brissett holdout. It's just really in a different spot from the rest of the division there. But I think you guys make great points about the opportunity for Carson Beck. And I'll say this about Carson Beck. It's not a bad situation he's walking into in Arizona in terms of the pass catchers available to him and the run game, which should, of course, be improved with Jeremiah Love.
And it was really interesting hearing LaFleur talk about Brissett today when he was asked, because he said basically, where we were 3 weeks ago with this negotiation. So, defensive coordinator Josh Allen was there throwing to his new addition, wideout DJ Moore. Just look at that beautiful football. Oh, man. The Bills quarterback was asked about the wide receiver room earlier today.
I think everyone's going to play their part, obviously. Certain guys are better at certain things just like anybody else is, but just trying to figure out what suits everybody right now during this OTA period, and to have guys that are able to do different roles but also go in there and not be afraid to block and be team first guys. That's what we want. But to see, again, some new faces and brought some old faces back. Again, guys are going to be able to mix match and learn different positions and see what sticks and go from there.
Jeff, you used a word earlier today about the Bills' continuity, right? Because they have Josh Allen, they have Joe Brady. But now with Brady as the head man, what kind of differences are we going to see?
Well, that's what's so interesting about this. There is continuity, but there is clear change too. And it's this very interesting contradiction that might work for the Bills. Joe Brady is very different than Sean McDermott in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying that will result in something different in terms of actual on-field results, but he has an energy about him that I think will sort of prevail in Buffalo and work very well with that locker room. Now, they've obviously added new pieces in DJ Moore on the offense and Bradley Chubb on defense and others as well. So you're seeing those changes. This is a team that recognizes they couldn't continue as they were and expect to win the Super Bowl. The question is, will the continuity work? Will Joe Brady and Josh Allen be able to do enough with what they have to be able to get over this hump? And they believe that they can. And Joe Brady definitely brings a certain energy that I think is going to be very well received in Buffalo.
I think whether or not the passing offense, because the run game was dominant last year, can improve at all. A lot of it does hinge on DJ Moore and what they get out of him, and he was their big acquisition to the receiver group. But I also think Joe Brady and the Bills could be served well by leaning into what I feel is the strength of that passing attack, and that's their tight ends. Dalton Kincaid was the best pass catcher in this offense. He's their best weapon against man coverage. And when they used multiple tight end sets, 12 13 personnel, which we have been discussing a lot, right? That's the trend of the league. They were second league-wide throwing the ball in EPA per play. But they didn't use them a lot. And some of that had to do with Kincaid's availability. He missed a few games. But I think it's a really well-rounded group with Dawson Knox being a little bit more traditional, and then Jackson Hawes is a very good blocker. And I think they could be well served by leaning even more into those tight ends, because coupled with that dominant rushing attack, you're really able to dictate to defenses the way teams like the Rams and the best teams that use tight ends at a high rate, did last season.
I'm watching the Sabres and the Canadians on ESPN last night, and it's just like, can they catch a break? Can they catch a break? They lose at home, game 7 in overtime, and it's like, this fan base deserves it. I wonder if the pressure is lifted or if the pressure is more with a new head coach. Like if it was McDermott again and they're hitting their wall and they're doing the same thing that they were always doing, it's like, gosh, it's all on Josh Allen's shoulders. But to Jeff's point, here comes a very different type of coach. McDermott from the defensive side of the ball has been in the league forever, to Joe Brady, who is basically a peer of Josh Allen's, is one of his pals who has been with him before, and comes in with maybe a different youthful exuberance and maybe more of an offensive-minded approach with Jim Leonard as defensive coordinator. That I'm fascinated to see how they come out of the gates. And I think week 2, opening that new stadium against the Lions on Thursday night, is going to be a nice litmus test for all of us to see where these Bills are under the spotlight, under the pressure, and how they respond to that. Because I don't want to feel that way for Buffalo again. And I felt it again last night, that same pit in my stomach for those fans, and I hated that.
Yeah, in week 1, they open at the Texans, who certainly have a little something to prove. We're looking at 8 seasons so far, a couple of conference championship games, but no Super Bowl wins. They really do need to be in a win-now mentality with Josh Allen as their quarterback, Mina. Have they done enough to take the next step?
Well, we've been talking about the offense, but I think the answer to that question, Hannah, probably lies on the other side of the ball. That's been the bigger weakness in this team. The run defense in particular has been a real weakness. Last year, second worst run defense in football behind only the Giants. So if they've improved in that regard, there are some changes up front. They added some pieces in the draft. And then Peter mentioned Jim Leonard. I thought was a really brilliant hire. That, to me, is going to be a bigger determinant rather than anything about the offense. Because I think we know what we're talking about. Yeah, can they beat man coverage? Can the tight ends, whatnot? The offense will probably be fine with Josh Allen. Yeah. The defense is the question mark, as it has been for years.
Well, they took their hype man and they moved him over to the Buffalo Sabres. It didn't exactly work out for the Sabres last night, but our one more thing is Boomer in Buffalo.
Come on, Buffalo! We need you! No one circles the wagons and the bull freaks like the Buffalo Sabres!
Well done. I hope it works out better for the Bills. You guys